Welcome to Building the Best You, a destination for you to reimagine what is possible in your life and then create it. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Jeanne Collins, and today is such a special day. I am so honored. We have Dr. Kristi Funk here on the show. And guys, this is like an honor. This woman is like an icon in the breast world. Holy cow. Double board certified breast cancer surgeon. I don't even want to mess this up, so I'm going to read some of it. Lifestyle medicine doctor, best-selling author, and international speaker. Oh my goodness. And yes, she even claims she has clients, not only claims, but has clients willing to say that she's their doctor like Angelina Jolie. So you are all things women's health. And I am so excited to have you on the show because we are going to talk about so many things: breast cancer, GLP-1s, HRT, how women can proactively take care of their own health, because I think it is such an important subject. So I thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us.
Thanks, Jeanne, for talking to me.
Oh, it's so wonderful. So just really quickly at a high level, because there's so much I want to talk about, but how did you get into the realm and decide that I want to be a breast cancer surgeon? Like, where did that come from?
Yeah. Okay. So I was in my surgical residency in Seattle, and this is way back when laparoscopy was just starting, where you operate through little incisions and stare at the camera. And, so I get elbowed out of the way by my attendings who were teaching me, but they themselves didn't know how to do it. So I thought, this is the future. I'm going to do a fellowship in laparoscopy because this is where surgery's headed: tiny incisions, TVs. And I came back to LA, where I'm from, to Cedars-Sinai Medical Center to do that fellowship. It's called minimally invasive surgery. So I'm doing this MIS fellowship for all of like 5 days. And the guy who headed it up happened to also be the director of their newly formed breast cancer center, which had literally 5 men over 50 running it. So they had Zippo-estrogen going on in this breast center. And so he was like, this was so male. This is so perfect. Male surgeon, I should say. He's like, I never really asked you what your aspirations were after you finish your fellowship. So let me tell you what you're going to do. You're not going to do this fellowship. You're going to do a breast cancer fellowship, and then you're going to take over the breast center.
Okay.
And I was like, I am. That seems boring and too easy. He's like, I understand it's a big shift. So don't worry about, answering me right away. You can let me know tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
Yeah.
Take 24 hours. Okay.
Exactly. For real. So deep soul searching on hyper speed and, prayer and thinking and envisioning my future. And I was like, you know what? He kind of has a point. I might think breast surgery is easy, but it's anything but easy for a woman going down this road. And it has become the privilege of my life to join women, come alongside them, hold their hand through what they perceive to be and what could actually be the scariest moment in their lives, and provide some guidance and direction and some empowerment for the days after, because cancer is but a moment. We get through it and then life goes on, and we want that life to be joyful and purposeful. And so that's how I transitioned from general surgery to just hyper focus on breast only.
Yeah. Wow.
And that was 24 years ago. Yeah.
Wow. And now you're the co-founder of this amazing company, Pink Lotus Breast Center, which I think is in Beverly Hills, right?
It used to be. So we've now moved everything to Santa Monica because I want to ride my bike to work every day, which is what I do.
I like that. I like that. Wow. So how many of the people who come to your center are actually from that area or come from other parts of the country because of your expertise?
90% are local and 10% fly from anywhere in the country or world.
All right. Good. All right. So I would love to talk about a bunch of things related to that and sort of try to help people have an understanding of things that they can do, resources that are out there. But first, I am curious. As an outside person, I'm fortunate. Thank you. I have not had breast cancer yet. But I feel like the number of women I know who have had it seems to be growing exponentially. And I don't know if that's just because of my age, because I'm 55, or because there just are more cases. So I'm curious from your perspective as a doctor, is it happening more? Is it people are screening more? They're finding it more often? What's your take on what appears to be a rise in it?
Right. All of the above, but it's actually factual. So you are in that cohort where we're more likely to get breast cancer. The median age, meaning half at and above and half below, is 63 years old in the United States. So as we approach 63, we're getting to the top of that bell curve where most of the cancers are happening.
Yeah.
It's also no longer taboo to talk about it. So you see it in social media and on the news and covered at GMA, et cetera, right? So it seems more rampant because people are readily talking about it instead of being like, I don't know what grandma died from. It was very hush hush, right? But the reality is in the numbers. So the incidence, the number of cases of breast cancer on a yearly basis has skyrocketed. I remember, I just said I started 24 years ago. I lectured a lot in the community. And I remember giving the stats on how many invasive breast cancers are happening this year. And the number when I started was 210,000. This year, 2026, the predicted number of breast cancer cases is 310,772.
Wow.
And that's invasive breast cancer. We can layer on that another 56,500 stage 0 in situ cancers. So we're talking about 370,000 women hearing you have breast cancer.
Yeah.
The incidence from 2012 to current day has been going up and up and up at 1% per year. However, the clip in those under 50, 1.4% per year. So not only are the numbers overall going up, but the ages are getting younger. So that is so backwards, right? Like it's 2026. Shouldn't we be like bigger, taller, faster, stronger by now? Like
Totally.
shouldn't cancer be in the rear view, not more prominent than ever? I will say that death rate, the mortality from breast cancer has been steadily going down since the 80s. And that's due to earlier detection and better treatments. But shouldn't we be smarter about why and stopping it from starting in the first place?
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Wouldn't that be a beautiful thing? Well, and so you answered one of my questions, and I just want to make sure I repeat it, which was I was curious if the level in which people are getting detected for having it and having that identified has lowered. So if it's more, stage 1, stage 2, and not quite as many stage 3, stage 4, which would indicate to me that people are going for screenings and catching it sooner. And based on what you said, that does at least appear to be the positive part of that trend, is that it is being caught sooner.
Right. More stages 0, 1, and 2 than decades ago. But it's still, quite disappointing. We're going to see 42,000 women die from breast cancer this year. And, behind skin, it's the number one cancer that women get. And in fact, in 2020, breast surpassed lung to become the number one malignant tumor on planet Earth. More than prostate, more than colon, more than lung. Like, we win. It's not the prize that we want.
No, right. No, that is not. That's not the plaque you want at the front of the office. No.
Right.
Oh my goodness. All right. So let's talk about screening then, because I feel like that is, so important. What do you recommend to people that they should follow as a screening protocol?
Right. Okay. So here's what I recommend. And I also recommend, just exhale. Just think about the stuff I'm saying. And, it's your life, your breast, your choice. No one should really get all up in your business if you're like, nope, I don't want to do mammograms, right? But data is data. So I will say that when you look at data, mammography repeatedly shows a 30% drop in mortality in dying from breast cancer in women who at least get a mammogram every other year.
Okay.
My recommendation for normal risk women, and we can talk about who would be at elevated risk, but if you're just average risk, you want to begin mammograms at age 40. Don't stop and don't skip years. Get them annually every year until you think it's reasonable that I will die in the next 10 years. Admittedly hard to predict, but not so hard if you're like oxygen bound and in a wheelchair, right? Like we can stop your mammograms. Why? Because even if you made a breast cancer, it would be insignificant. It wouldn't grow to the size where it broke skin and caused pain. It wouldn't metastasize and kill you before others said issue in your life, medical issue. So that's the schedule. But part 2, if you have dense breasts, this is a huge increase, not only in breast cancer risk, but in missing a cancer when present if you're screening with mammograms alone. So how do you know if you're dense breasted? You really don't, except thankfully last year became ubiquitous across the US in every single state that all imaging centers by law must send you a letter in the mail that says, hey, your mammogram was negative. That's awesome. But by the way, you're dense. So we're not so good at seeing cancers when they're dense. Good luck with that. So it's useful information, but literally zero direction. Like,
Yeah. They don't tell you
that
what
is
to do about that?
no, no, they
Oh,
honestly do not. They put
okay.
the onus back on your doctor, whether it's your OB-GYN or primary doctor. Maybe you see someone like me, but they do not tell you what to do. I'm going to suggest to you what you might want to do. So if you find
Right.
out you're dense breasted, absolutely whole breast screening ultrasound.
Yeah.
Knee jerk reaction, no questions asked. Why?
Yeah.
It's so harmless, right? Like there's no radiation, there's no heavy metal injections. It's just a sound wave. Now, there's always drawbacks to any imaging study, specifically in the what we call false positives. Oh, we think we see something. It might be cancer, it might not, but now you need to come back and we're going to look again and we may biopsy and so there's this whole avalanche of anxiety and downstream things that can happen all for nothing if it's benign. But that's a thing, an experience we're willing to tolerate in order to find the cancers.
Yeah.
So I can briefly give you like the stats on that.
I would, because I don't think a lot of women actually do that. Of the women I know, I don't know a lot of women who do that extra step.
They really should. And this is half of women. So 50% of women before menopause have dense breasts and 50 don't.
Mm.
Then between 50 and 60, you start to lose some density, particularly if you do not go on hormone replacement therapy. So your natural estrogen declines, which was keeping your breasts more dense. And so we see instead of it being 50% of women, it's 40% are dense. And then after age 60, 30% are dense. So you do lose density with aging, but density is a problem. Now, on a mammogram, we grade it A through D. A's and B's are not dense, and C's
Right.
and D's are.
Sure.
This is also important because they don't distinguish whether you are a C or a D. And this is actually pretty meaningful in terms of how bad we are at finding that cancer. So 40% of all women are going to be C and 10% are going to be D.
Mm.
That's the 50% who are dense, right?
Yes. Right. Yep.
So most of us who are dense breasted are in the C category, which means we look at a mammogram and visually about 50 to 75% of what we're looking at is a white splotchy snowstorm.
Okay.
Problem because cancer's white on a mammogram.
Oh,
So now we're
okay.
looking for a snowball in a snowstorm and we
Yeah.
miss cancer in C level density 25% of the time. D, we miss it 40% of the time. Add in there an implant just for augmentation,
Yeah.
and we're going to miss another 20%.
Wow.
So in all dense breasted women, we want to add whole breast screening ultrasound because the dense breast still looks white, but cancer looks black. So it pops out.
Ah. Okay.
I like spacing, if people can keep their schedule, I like spacing their screening mammo 6 months from their screening ultrasounds, like January, July, or February, August. So that,
Interesting.
yeah, there's something called an interval cancer. In other words, anyone who's had breast cancer, their first thought is like, why didn't they see it last year on my mammogram, right? If they have been keeping up regularly. And that's because it wasn't visible last year and now it's of a size where it popped out and revealed itself. However, if you had gotten a mammogram at the 6-month mark, would it have seen this cancer? Would we have had a 6-month heads up on its presence? Probably. But that's too much radiation. We don't do mammograms that
Right.
frequently. But
Yeah.
that's the point of staggering the ultrasound away from the mammogram so that you have the opportunity to catch an interval cancer rather than letting a whole 12 months go by.
Fascinating.
Now, layer on top of average risk a little bit of higher risk. So maybe mom or sister or your own daughter had breast cancer. So first degree relatives or a whole lot of cancer going on and 2 aunts and grandma. Or you yourself have had a breast biopsy with what we call a marker lesion. So atypical cells, radial scar. There's words that we would look for
Yeah.
in a path report that elevate your future. It's basically whispering. Your breast is talking to you saying like, I'm busy and one of these days I'm going to try to make something out of myself. Right. So, so these proliferative breasts are a little higher risk. So what we like to add on top of mammo and ultrasound is maybe a breast MRI or one of my favorites, which is not available widely throughout the US, but it's contrast enhanced mammo. Both of those, MRI and contrast mammo, do require injection of either iodine for the mammogram or gadolinium, which is another heavy metal if you're getting an MRI. So again, pros and cons to all this stuff, but as a general, example of how helpful these tools are, let me give you the results of the BRAID study that came out May 2025, so quite recent.
Just
And
happened.
they looked at 9,300 women in the UK who all had density D. So here are super duper dense women
Yeah.
in whom we miss 40% of breast cancers. All of their mammograms were normal, and they were divided into 3 groups. You guys get a whole breast screening ultrasound, you guys get a breast MRI, and you guys get the contrast mammo. So nobody had a normal mammo find cancer. The ultrasound found 4,
Okay.
the MRI found 17, and the contrast mammo found 19.
Ooh, okay. Yeah.
So we definitely up the ante by adding imaging beyond mammograms alone.
Right. 4 to 19 is a substantial increase in the world of science and statistics. Like, that's a
Yes.
lot.
So
When you,
everybody density D, which is not the majority, remember 10%
yeah.
of all women. I definitely throw an MRI or contrast mammo into the mix. Not every year.
Mhm.
Depends on their extra risk factors. So it's just that they're D, but no family history, no inherited gene mutation like BRCA2, PALB2, and the like. Then I'll go every 3 years with the extra imaging that involves contrast.
Yeah.
And then if the risk elevates from there, maybe every other year. And for the highest of risk, like a BRCA carrier, every year.
Yeah. Wow. That is crazy. Okay, I have a couple quick questions. One, the first one is probably really dumb, but if I have it, I'm sure other people do too. Is there any correlation between breast size and density?
There is not actually. So, yeah.
So, like, you can have small breasts, you could be a B sized cup and still have dense breasts in terms of how we're talking about your breast density.
Yeah. The truth is, your A and B cup women are probably going to have more density than fat. It's
Okay.
usually the converse mistake. People are like, "Oh, I'm double D, so I'm going to have a higher risk of breast cancer." The larger the breast, the more there's a fat percentage underneath that breast skin. So they're not even necessarily dense breasted just because they're large breasted. So the stuff that makes cancer is under that skin. That's the problem. And fat's never the problem. Well, fat has
Right.
its own category of being a problem, but
Right.
fat doesn't make breast cancer.
Yeah. Okay. All right. That's super helpful. All right. Second question. You mentioned starting mammograms at 40. Will insurance pay for that, or does that require the doctor providing some sort of justification as to why that should happen at that age?
All insurances cover mammograms at 40. There's no
Okay.
controversy there. Yeah.
I wasn't sure. I,
Yeah.
I've been having them for years, so I wasn't sure, but I don't want to be a case study of one person. So, also interesting. So, I'm also really curious, do breast implants increase someone's risk of cancer or not really? That's just sort of a myth? Or is there any validation to that?
Okay, so it's a total myth. It doesn't matter if they're saline or silicone. Breast implants do not increase breast cancer risk. However, they, as I already mentioned, impede breast cancer detection through
Okay.
mammogram alone. Ultrasound, MRI, they don't care. They don't care at all about your implants. So that's another reason to implement a little extra imaging. And
Mhm.
here's the interesting truth: women with implants tend to have less breast cancer than those without. Has nothing
Really?
to do, yeah. It has nothing to do with the implants. It has everything to do with the type of person who generally chooses to have breast augmentation, which is generally someone thinner and athletic and very body conscious and so
Mhm.
health minded. So they're
Okay.
more likely to eat better. They are more likely to have all of these attributes in their diet and lifestyle that are known to categorically reduce breast cancer risk.
Right.
That's a
Yeah.
broad generalization, but in studies, it pans out to equal less breast cancer.
Wow. That's fascinating. Okay. So, but that transitions so well to my next question, which is what, if anything, can women do to try to proactively reduce their risk of breast cancer?
Okay,
Understanding that I don't know that you can, but maybe you can, really. Maybe you really can.
Jeanne, this is my favorite question on
Oh,
planet Earth.
good.
Like I'm bursting with excitement, and I wrote an entire book about it.
Yay. All right.
Yay! All right, I know I hate it when my favorite question comes. Really quickly. We only have 60 seconds left, but and then that. Uh,
No, because I'm so curious because so many other types of cancer, it's like, okay, lung cancer, all right, don't smoke, but you still could get lung cancer, but don't smoke. Like
Right.
that's kind of a no-brainer. Breast cancer, when I think about it, I don't really, as a woman, I don't know if there's anything I can do. So I am so curious for the answer.
Oh, I'm so excited to talk. Okay, so there's so much you can do. This is so empowering. Whether you've already been diagnosed with breast cancer or you just never want to be, there are so many dietary and lifestyle tweaks that you can make to your life that will alter the cell microenvironment. These little, like the bathtub water that your own cells soak in, is
Okay.
always screaming out pro cancer or anti cancer based on what you eat or don't eat, do or don't do, move or don't move, think or don't think, touch or don't, forgive or love. Like it goes deep. There's so much you can do. But let's back up 1 second and ask this question. What percentage of women with breast cancer have an inherited gene mutation from mom or dad, like the BRCA genes or CHEK2 or these gene mutations? They're mutations in genes whose sole job it is inside of you is to identify cancerous changes and to either fix them or throw those cells out before they can form a cancerous wad and become a threat. Okay.
Okay.
So all of us have BRCA. We have BRCA genes and they work. So when
Okay.
you have a mutated BRCA, all of a sudden your risk skyrockets to as high as 87% chance of breast cancer. All right. So what percentage of the women who get breast cancer can attribute it to a gene?
I would think a lot. If I had to guess, I'm just going to take a stab here. I would think 60%, more than half.
8.
Oh, wow. Okay. I'm
Yeah.
totally wrong. I'm on the other spectrum. Okay.
5 to 10%. Data varies.
Okay.
Okay, so only 5 to 10% of all breast cancer comes largely because of these inherited mutations. This is a second stat that kind of falls in line. If we buy the first one, what percentage of women with breast cancer have a first degree relative with breast cancer?
That I would think is high. I'm going back with my 60% again.
13.
Oh my God. Clearly, I don't know my research on breast cancer, but that's why we're doing
okay.
this.
Most
That's
people
why we're
don't.
doing it. Most people don't. Right. Most people
Uh,
don't. Until you have it, you don't know. So, yeah.
Until you have it, you don't usually want to know. And that's what I've spent a lot of my career doing, is trying to make breast cancer risk reduction fun and
Yeah.
approachable and understandable, because you don't want to do the crash course in my office one-on-one. You have breast cancer. Here's everything you need to know to treat and cure it.
Right. Yes.
Now, so here we go. Again, to summarize, only 5 to 10% of breast cancer patients have gene mutations. Only
Yep.
13% of them have mom, dad, probably not dad, but could be dad, by the way, men get
Yeah.
breast cancer.
Yeah.
A first degree relative, parent, sibling, child with breast cancer. And only 20% have a single relative anywhere, second, third degree.
Wow. Wow.
So
Okay.
that gives us 5 to 10% gene mutation. I'm going to say 5 to 10% weird stuff, inexplicable. It's actually getting worse post-COVID, and I have theories about that, with the 20-something with no family history who hasn't even lived long enough, badly enough to explain what is going on in that breast of hers, right? That
Right.
just seems unfair, and it is. But the point is, it's a little less knowable and understandable, at least scientifically right now. It leaves us with a huge fat middle of a solid 80% of cancers where we can get in to tinkering with stuff. Back to that bathtub water. What are we fueling it with? So here are the big heavyweights. There are 9 of them
Okay.
that, according to my research, this isn't like an article. I made
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
up.
Yeah. No, I'm
Yeah.
excited.
This is my
Yes.
heavily researched opinion. 9 things that you can focus on that can dramatically impact your risk of getting breast cancer or of having an existing cancer recur.
Okay.
So the biggest that have the most support in the scientific literature, I'm going to have you think of as boulders on your scale, tipping you toward or away from breast cancer, depending on if you have the boulder or not. And then the other 5 are pebbles, heavy enough to tip a scale. But if you've already got a boulder on there, like, honey, let's stop worrying about microplastics when
Yeah.
you got a boulder. Okay.
Right. Okay.
So,
Yep.
but the microplastics are on my list. Okay. So here are my 4 boulders. Nutrition.
Okay.
The science is extraordinarily clear that a whole food, plant-based diet is your most cancer prevention strategy type of diet. So animal protein and animal fat are going to elevate estrogen levels inside of you abnormally higher so that estrogen has a chance to feed and fuel a cancer. 80% of all breast cancers have receptors for estrogen on them. So they're
Interesting.
fueled by estrogen.
They're fueled by
And
estrogen.
eating animal protein will elevate estrogen. It elevates a hormone called IGF-1, insulin-like growth factor. This is the big daddy growth promoter inside of our bodies. Like it screams at every cell to grow, which is super useful if you're a child growing up. And
Yeah.
it's useful to us adults because we turn over a shocking 50 billion cells a day. So thanks to
Yeah.
IGF-1, we turn over a new layer of cells. But your brain is super smart, tells your liver how much IGF-1 to make. When you eat animal protein, you now elevate your IGF-1 beyond what your body needed for the daily tasks.
Okay.
So now IGF-1 is just screaming at things to grow plaque, grow fat, grow cancer, grow metastases into the lung, into the liver. So you want to quiet the IGF-1 levels down.
Okay.
There are people they're in Ecuador. They could clearly leave, but they haven't all be there. They have something called Laron syndrome, and they cannot process IGF-1. So they all have medical dwarfism because they don't grow. And no one in the history of the world with Laron syndrome has ever had breast cancer. No one in the history of the world with Laron syndrome has ever had type 2 diabetes. Why? Because you need IGF-1 to make breast cancer and type 2 diabetes. So we do not need an excess of IGF-1.
Right.
Eating animal protein does so many other things, but I wanted to highlight one more thing that it does that's bad, and that is angiogenesis. Angio, blood vessel, genesis, birth, the birth of new blood flow. So for any cancer, not just breast, aspiring to be larger than the tip of a ballpoint pen, 2 millimeters. Once it reaches that size, it has to get its own blood supply. Diffusion doesn't work anymore. So it has to send out some angiogenic factors. The biggest of all is called VEGF, but meat will increase VEGF, which then gets sprinkled out into the nearby bathtub water so that blood flow comes to this cancer so it can get the nutrients that it needs. And when it gets big and strong enough, boom, exit strategy, straight through those same blood vessels to the liver, to the lung, right?
Right.
So in the same way that eating animal protein has these detrimental effects, it's not just that, I guess I'll have like lentils, beans, peas, soy, seitan, which is wheat gluten, the high source of protein. Instead, I got to get my protein from somewhere, so I'll do that. Oh, well, move on. It is incredible when you realize that plants, on average, have 64 times the antioxidant content of any animal product. 64 times, 6,300% more. So the food you're eating instead of the animal protein for protein does all the opposite of what I just said. It lowers excess estrogen. It lowers IGF-1. It creates anti-angiogenic compounds that literally unplug the blood vessels that may be already inside of a cancer. In other words, we can reverse a pro-cancer process to make it anti-cancer.
Ooh. Okay.
Pretty fascinating.
That's fascinating. Okay. So that's number one is food. I had absolutely no idea. Like absolutely, I don't eat meat. I do eat fish, but I definitely don't eat meat, and I do eat fish. But I've been vegetarian and vegan before. I've done both of those too. So
fish is, it's not as innocent as we like to think. It's still filled with cholesterol and saturated fat, despite the billing of high omega-3 fatty acids. But we also, in those fish, in modern times, have dioxins, PCBs, microplastics. And then whenever you cook meat, so unless you're having sashimi, you're cooking meat, and it doesn't matter if it's fish or beef or anything else, the high heat combined with the creatine in meat creates heterocyclic amines and polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, which is a mouthful for two of the most potent carcinogens that you could possibly chew and swallow down and put right into the bathtub water.
Wow. Okay, so this is fascinating because I was actually thinking of making a vegetarian dish for dinner, and now I definitely am going to.
Yeah, double down on the tofu.
I am definitely doing that for dinner because that just feels right. So before we move on to the other 8, because I want to make sure we get to them, just really quickly. So if people come in and they have been diagnosed with breast cancer, is that the first thing you tell them to start doing is to really think about nutrition?
hmm I
Okay.
do, and I empower them because I have a smoothie. You can just Google Kristi
Yep.
Funk smoothie. It's like viral
Yes.
because it's packed with 13 of the 18 anti-breast cancer superfoods that I want my patients to be getting into their bodies every single day. So a smoothie is a very convenient, easy way to do that. I understand that it's not always easy in this transition, especially for like the meat and potato lover who grew up, Midwest. Like this is just so ingrained. It's like tied to family gatherings and the meaning of love and life for them
Yeah.
sometimes. So
Yep.
we're not trying to dismantle the life entirely in a day, but I encourage them to like, let's just look at a meal. Like breakfast is pretty easy to veganize,
Yeah.
instead of having eggs and bacon, let's think about getting some oatmeal. We can put flaxseed and cinnamon, some berries, some walnuts, soy milk. Amazing meal, right? So
Yes.
I just encourage it. And I have a bajillion resources. So it's not just, I told you to do this, now go figure it out and open the fridge at home and you're like, forget it, make me a turkey sandwich. I can't figure
Yes.
it out,
Yeah.
right? Like I
Yes,
help.
you do. You have recipes and stuff on your website. You have a blog, you have a book, you've got all kinds of stuff. So
Oh, look at you
I,
doing your
we'll
research.
put all of that in the show notes. So you definitely have lots of resources. Okay. I want to make sure we get to the other 8 that make up the 9, because I want to make sure we have time to talk about, I want to talk about HRT and GLP-1s too, and how
Awesome.
they play with that too. All right. The other
Yes,
8.
I'm obsessed. Okay, so the other 8, so boulders, we were doing 4 boulders. Diet was boulder 1.
Yeah.
Exercise is boulder 2.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. The data that just is pouring out year after year in recent years about the benefits of exercise is unbelievably like overwhelming to me. You know that exercise is beneficial like in a general way because you just feel better and you have more energy, but it's actually working in such like potent cellular ways to stoke your immune system, to improve insulin sensitivity, which is a term, but you really have to understand what that means. Like your muscle and your liver cells have these receptors for insulin, right? You eat a meal, particularly one with carbohydrates, and you get more glucose flying around in your blood. That
Yep.
stimulates insulin release to come out and manage the glucose, manage the sugar, right?
Yeah.
It needs to be done efficiently and quickly. Otherwise, the sugar hangs out too long. And that is cancer food. Like, people hear sugar fuels cancer. It's true.
Yeah.
I want candy. Like, that is the battle cry. That is the
Right.
favorite song of cancer. And I could deep dive into any one of these avenues, and they're also
Yeah.
fascinating to me. But just believe me that sugar fuels cancer.
Yep.
But even more deleterious than sugar is insulin. So now, if you don't have that insulin come out after the sugar, do its quarterback job, telling everybody where to go, and then retreating away because its job is done until your next meal.
Right.
If it's hanging out, insulin, it has direct receptors on breast cancer to make it grow. Insulin goes off to the fat where you can convert precursor steroids into more estrogen. Insulin spikes that VEGF I was talking about to make more blood flow happen to a tumor. It really goes on and the bad effects of too much insulin. So what makes you insulin resistant? Everybody who thinks about diabetes just thinks sugar. Like that's why you shouldn't have fruit if you're diabetic. That is not the problem. Even doctors don't understand. The problem is that the receptor on the muscle cell,
Yeah.
sugar comes out, insulin says, sugar, go into the muscle so it can be stored as glycogen. Insulin will go into the insulin receptor on the muscle. And when it does, the sugar gate opens and the glucose comes in.
Okay.
Saturated fat clogs the receptors.
Okay.
So too much saturated and trans fat in a diet doesn't we don't know where to stuff it now. We've
Right.
you put it under the chin, we put it in around the organs,
Right.
and now your body's like, just go into the receptor, just sit
Right.
there. And
Right.
so now you eat the meal, the insulin comes out, and the receptor's like, can't hear you, I'm stuck with fat, right? So
Yeah.
this sugar's running around, the insulin has nowhere to go, and your body sees this feedback loop and it's like, why isn't it listening? Let me just throw out more insulin so that maybe we can get rid of the sugar.
Right.
And that's the bottom line problem. So exercise, slowly but surely, in conjunction with eating well, it's going to melt the fat out of the receptor, lets insulin back in to do its thing. So you have insulin sensitivity now.
Okay.
All right. So we've got that. Exercise improves body composition, meaning less fat, more muscle. It decreases estrogen, a standalone mechanism of decreasing estrogen. It decreases inflammation. And this is such a buzzword these days, but it is a good one to have because it really is the bottom line in all of our illness, whether we're talking autoimmune diseases, depression and anxiety, like inflammation is the background requirement for all badness in our bodies. It means that oxidative stress has tipped the scales and now mayhem ensues. So exercise dials that back. You have less inflammation. All right. So once I wax on about the benefits of exercise, most people are like, okay, well, doc, how much is the very minimum amount of exercise I have to do?
Oh my goodness.
And I will tell you that I'll take whatever you'll give me. And if you're, couch potato by nature and have been for decades and walking 5 minutes is a stretch, then give me 4.5. And next week, maybe we get 5. And I mean it. Like just start because the
Start
data
moving.
shows, there was this really great study of postmenopausal women and even just walking briskly for 11 minutes a day dropped breast cancer incidence by 18%.
Wow. That's huge.
Pretty cool.
That's
But
huge. Yes.
if you want to get an A+, which I always did as a student, so,
Yes.
obnoxious, right?
Right.
Get all the answers right and the extra credit. That golden answer is 5 hours a week. 5 hours a week if you can carry on a conversation with whatever you're doing.
Okay.
2.5 hours, you get to cut it in half if it's super sweaty, vigorous exercise where you're huffing and puffing and cannot be singing a song while you do it.
Right.
The interesting thing about the curve for more exercise, more benefit is that there is no end, but it starts to look like it's going to plateau at 150 minutes, so 2.5 hours a week of cardio exercise.
Yeah.
But then you actually extend life and have more benefit pushing it to double that to 5 hours. And then the line again looks pretty much flat, but it technically isn't. And the irony there is that the extra number of hours you would exercise beyond 5 hours a week is about the number of hours that you extend your life by. So you do live longer, but you spend all that time exercising.
Oh, okay. Well, but that's okay. You're still living longer. All right.
You are
It's
living
still
longer.
good. It's still all good. Yeah. Yeah. Well, and weight training is also, I'm sure, part of your recommendation in there for people who do currently exercise, especially for women who get into the perimenopause stage, having to build up your muscles and do some weight training and strength training. I know is super important too.
30 minutes 3 times a week. We try to hit all the muscle groups depending on how you like to do it. But for sure, we could talk about that with the GLP-1 use in particular. It's like critical that you strength train.
Okay, I'm going to make sure you bring that back up because I've heard that that's critical. Okay, what's the other two? We have 2 more boulders, right?
2 more boulders, yes.
2 more boulders, yes. What are they?
This one's a buzzkill. Alcohol.
Everyone knows it's bad for them.
I know. Well, surprisingly, in polls, most women are not aware that alcohol has a direct connection to breast cancer risk. So if you pick your poison, 5 ounces of wine equals 1.5 ounces of hard liquor equals a 12-ounce beer. A drink a day increases breast cancer by 10% over a non-drinker. 2 drinks a day, 25% increase. 3 drinks a day, 30 to 40% increase, and onwards and upwards from there.
Yep.
Alcohol is just a pure carcinogen, not to mention that it's a neurotoxin. It shrinks your brain. It messes with your sleep. It causes weight gain. I wish there was some redemptive quality, but the truth is even claims of but there's resveratrol and that's an antioxidant. And we were just claiming inflammation's the big problem, right? Yeah. Do you know a gram of resveratrol, which, you can pop in a pill and you get from the skin of the red grape. You don't actually have to make it into wine and then drink red wine. To get a gram of resveratrol, you need 500 liters of wine.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. All right.
There goes that theory. Next boulder.
Okay. Yep.
Weight. Being overweight or obese. Adiposity, fat is so inflammatory. It goes well beyond what we used to think. This is pretty new data. I mean, in the last decade that we've understood fat and breast cancer as more than this simple connection. Fat has an enzyme called aromatase. Aromatase converts adrenal gland steroids into estrogen. And
Okay.
we've been talking about how estrogen is one source of fuel for breast cancers. So we were theorizing that overweight women are just converting more estrogen and therefore are having higher rates of breast cancer. And while that's one mechanism of action, it goes way deeper, and the bigger triggers are more likely that fat is an endocrine organ. It's metabolically very active, and it is the main source of leptin in our bodies. And there are literally leptin receptors on breast cells that then create cancerous proliferation.
Okay.
So leptin is a cancer promoter in that way. Fat spews out all of these like cytokines and these mediators of inflammation that tip that oxidative stress balance and other things. But this is the beautiful take home message: lose the fat, lose the risk.
Yeah.
So it's not
Right.
like damage is done. The damage is totally reversible
Yeah.
through weight loss.
Weight loss. Okay. Now we have 5 pebbles.
We have 5 pebbles that we'll just touch on as putting them out there. I mean, again, I could do, long lectures on each one of
At
these
each,
things.
oh, of course. We could do this every day for the next 3 weeks, I'm sure.
Exactly. Yeah.
Definitely, because I have enough questions about every single one of them, but we're gonna make sure
Oh,
everybody gets them all. All right.
okay.
Yes.
So our boulders were eating too much animal protein. So you lift the boulder off by eating more whole food plant based, a lack of exercise. So start exercising, drinking alcohol. So stop or cut way back,
Yep.
being overweight, reach your ideal body weight and stay there forever. The
Yes.
pebbles,
Yes.
environmental toxicity.
Yeah.
So this is so ubiquitous. You cannot live in a bubble, but I do encourage you to just examine your home, work, car environments. And especially when the higher ticketed items like a new couch or a new frying pan come into play, let's look for a non toxic option, right?
Right.
In terms of your cooking utensils and furniture. Bigger picture there, though, that can start right away. Look at your laundry soap, detergent, makeup. Like, are there phthalates? Are there microplastics? Are there parabens? Like, look for these words. They hide and they're in there. You're like, what? I've been using this face moisturizer my whole life. I had no idea the word paraben is right there, right?
Yep.
So be more mindful and just, it's such an easy swap. And so just get rid of that stuff. Think about if you have a little extra expendable income, put a HEPA filter in so your air is getting filtered. Think about a point of entry filter for your whole house so the water that you're drinking and showering in is purified. The whole idea of like, don't touch receipts because there's BPA in the receipt. It's going to be, again, maybe a grain of sand in our analogy with the pebbles. It's a
Right.
small amount. You could say, I don't need the receipt. If you don't need the receipt, then don't touch it, right? But these are not causing breast cancer. It's just one more thing tipping us toward or away.
Yeah.
But let's really look at the environment and try to clean that up. And microplastics is a big part of that. There should be no, those black. I'm shocked that people don't know that you don't heat food in plastic. First of all, and
I
second
don't
of all, the
understand that.
black. I know, but they're out there. I just saw someone the other day. She took her black plastic food container that came from a food delivery service, which is based on being healthy because you're trying to have excellent organic
Right.
food delivered to you, and they put it in these plastic things that then say
I know.
heat it
It's
up.
crazy. Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, those are super toxic. I've actually read that it would be better for all of us to throw them in the trash to go into the landfill rather than recycling the black plastic to just come back and live another day as a fork. So
Okay.
please, glass, ceramic,
Yes.
silicone, like the spatulas, the Tupperware that you're using, get rid of all the plastic. Okay.
All the plastics. Yes. Straws
Environmental,
too. Metal straws. You have to use metal straws,
metal,
everybody.
yes.
And your water bottles, they need to be metal. No plastic. No plastic. It's the easy swap.
It is an easy swap. Okay, here's another biggie that I love: emotional stress. And this includes paying attention to your relationships, right?
Okay.
So having strong, positive social connection in a planned way, right? Like, don't just expect it to happen. You want to schedule time with your partner, time with your BFFs, right? Like,
Yep.
because stress is ubiquitous, again, just like environmental toxicities, but you can try to harness and manage it very intentionally, right? So sounds like a little hocus pocus, but mindfulness and
Yeah.
meditation really matter. They really do change your internal biochemistry.
Yeah.
Most doctors have no idea. I didn't have I just think about breasts all day and all night. So I happen to like uncover these little fun facts. So, fun fact breast cancer has beta adrenergic receptors on it. Estrogen driven, like 30 to 40% of the cancers are driven by cortisol and epinephrine, like your stress hormones. There's receptors on them. When the stress hormone hits it, it makes it divide. Triple
Ah,
negatives, 60 to 80% of them have these receptors. So that's just a very direct connection between stress and breast cancer
sure.
because it can fuel it. The more indirect one is that mind body connection is real, right? You're watching a scary movie and all of a sudden your heart's pounding, your palms are sweaty. Like,
Yeah.
the guy's not coming after you with the knife, but your body is
Thanks.
literally, your
Yes.
mind is making, yeah. So, and we just ask any guy who's ever had an erection if there's a mind body connection,
Right.
right?
Right.
So, when you don't harness that connection to be positive, you are elevating all of these biochemical pathways that land us in that world of oxidative stress and inflammation.
Yeah.
So, that's another controllable risk factor.
Okay.
Fasting. The judicious use of fasting, both intermittent on a daily basis and a more prolonged fast
Yeah.
of at least 5 days, does wonders for rejuvenating your immune system.
Okay.
Obsessed with Prolon, if you've ever heard of that. It's a 5-day fast because you get to
I
eat while you're fasting. Do you
Yeah,
know
I
what?
have heard of that. And actually, I think we're going to put a link in the show notes because I have a link that takes people to that. And so that I have seen that. So talk to me about
Yeah.
that really quickly.
Okay, I'm obsessed. So here's the thing about eating. It's a really arduous task for your body to deal with a meal. So most people, they have breakfast. You may fast till, do intermittent and fast until like 10, 11 a.m.,
Yeah.
but eventually you're eating. And then out comes the process that I was talking about with insulin and glucose. And it's busy. And your immune system really just doesn't have time through all of your daily life, your
Yeah.
movement, your thinking, and all of that. So you need to quiet it down inside of you in a way that allows cell rejuvenation and repair to happen and this cool process called autophagy to happen. Auto, self, phage, eat. So
Yep.
autophagy is when you eat yourself
Yeah.
in a very strategic way. In other words, your cells start to get broken down in order of age. So these senescent, buzzing around, old, dead, damaged, dying, deranged cells get broken apart into components and recycled into brand new, like strong, healthy, recruited cells
Yes.
when you fast. Okay, the overnight fast, it's a laughable, like it scratches the surface of autophagy in a meaningless way. You need
Yeah.
to have not eaten for 72 hours to get into autophagy. And then you get into all of the cell rejuvenation and renewal. And so a lot of the Prolon diet is a box. You order it and it comes with 5 boxes of food that you get to eat. It puts you into a vegan ketosis. The food is specifically formulated so that your body never gets the memo that you just had soup or a seed and nut bar. It
Okay.
never elevates insulin.
Yeah.
So here's what's happening now. Your cells get a little announcement that says, she's not eating and I don't know why, but you need to slow down and just conserve energy. And when she eats, we'll let you know.
Right.
So the cool thing about that is you are eating, so you're not so hangry. It's not great. It's like 880 calories a day, and 2 days is 650. Those are like the worst days 3 and 5. But even I do it. I have my cancer patients do it for specific reasons there, but even I do it every 3 to 4 months. I've been doing it for a decade because the
Okay.
science is so strong. So you're going to eat this food so that you can handle it and not be too
Yeah.
hungry.
Yeah.
You're going to get into autophagy days 3, 4, 5. And here's the cool thing on day 6, when you eat again, all the scientific studies in humans with blood draws show you get an 8-fold increase in stem cell production for
Ooh.
having gone through the fight. Stem cells
Okay. Yeah.
can
Which is
zip
good.
out and become,
Right.
whatever you need them to be, like a new
Yeah.
liver cell because of your
Right.
alcohol or your Ativan or your
Yeah.
all the detoxing, right? Or what most of us need, especially my cancer patients, brand new natural killer cells, like the big leader of the immune system.
Yeah.
So fasting, really
Okay.
important.
Okay.
Another one that is so overlooked and poorly understood by just the everyday woman, sleep. We think of
Ah.
sleep Yeah. It's a third
Love
of
it.
your life kind of a thing, but you think, oh,
Yeah.
I'm just going to sleep so I can wake up and have energy to go into the grind again, right? Sleep is fascinating. There's two things I want you to know about sleep. Number one, that is when your immune system comes out to play and to kill cancer when you're sleeping. I just was
Oh,
talking about fasting. It's too
yeah.
busy all day.
Right.
It is not only when you sleep, it's the first 3 hours of sleep. And it's not just that, it's your deep sleep. So, like, I have this Garmin. I encourage people to have some sort of wearable so that you can understand your sleep. I will tell you. Oh, yeah, your Aura ring.
Yeah. I have my Aura ring. It's amazing.
So
Life
it
changing.
really help, and it's life informing too. Like,
Correct.
for example, I'm not a teetotaler, so I will tell you my sleep score overall will be 92 to 98 every
Wow.
night. I'll
Wow.
have one glass of wine and my sleep was 55.
Yes.
I had no idea though. I didn't
Yes.
realize it because I still closed my eyes and woke up the next day. Like, I'm a pretty great
Yep.
sleeper. I don't have to pee in the middle of the night and stuff. So I had no idea. Like, my REM sleep is gone when I look at like that bad number. So you really have to, if you're wanting to get into the weeds with optimizing your health, have some sort of thing that tells you about your sleep. But you want to sleep because, number one, immune system function beyond the obvious, because you want to
Right.
sleep well so that can have focus and energy and stamina the next day. Number two, this is super new. We only discovered it in 2012. It's called the glymphatic system. So just like your lymph system in your nodes gets rid of debris and damaged cells and viruses and bacteria infection, etc., we have a similar system, but it's only for the brain. It's called the glymphatic because it takes the trash out of your glial cells, your
Okay.
neurons.
Yep.
And it's only active when you're asleep.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
So it's critical.
It's
Yeah.
critical that you sleep and sleep well to get all the junk out of your brain,
Yeah. Definitely.
including starting to get rid of some of the beta amyloid plaques and tau proteins, which are those two things that elevate Alzheimer's risk.
Yeah. Right. Well, and a lot of times people don't get enough sleep because they're also so highly stressed too. So
It's so circular, right? You
It's
don't
right.
exercise.
Yeah, they
Like,
drink too
exercise
much. They don't exercise. It's like all of it all really ties so beautifully together. And if you can make changes in these things, then all of a sudden, I would think it compounds and has a compound effect of goodness as well.
It really does. And it makes it easier because it's not like, oh my gosh, I have to exercise to fix this one thing and I have to sleep to fix that one. No, you
Yeah.
kind of just, it all, as you said, compounds and works
A
synergistically.
lifestyle. It's a lifestyle. Okay. All right. I
All
don't
right.
want us to run out of time.
We won't.
GLP-1s.
Oh,
Let's
wait,
talk
we have
about
the 9th thing. And you're going to love it because it's what we have to talk about anyway.
Yeah.
So here's why, like, you're gonna be like, what? What is she talking about? How is this a pebble or a grain of sand? And yet then I'm promoting it. And that is hormone replacement therapy.
Yes. Okay. Yes.
Okay.
Let's
So that is
talk.
our 9th possible contributor to that bathtub water that can be a little pro-cancer, but is it really? And this is where it gets nuanced and very patient specific.
Okay. So talk to us about that. Let's talk about HRT then. We'll end with GLP-1s. So
Yes. Okay.
hormones, that was not what I expected you to say. So
Right.
I feel like I heard you say a couple times for some of the other things it like increased estrogen, which was going to be a bad thing. But then I'm thinking to myself, well, but we take HRT to increase estrogen. So, or maybe I'm
Mhm.
misunderstanding, but I feel like a couple times you said a couple things there were bad because they increase estrogen production. But you're going to tell me.
You heard me, Jeanne. That's exactly right. So
Okay.
this is where you have to really let me think it through with people because everybody wants the 1 second soundbite and then you take it in isolation and you're like, she said estrogen causes breast cancer, full stop.
Great.
Okay.
Right.
You just it can't always be in one sentence. Okay.
Great.
So
Okay.
yes, estrogen can cause, but I would argue you can't bake a cake with flour
Okay.
alone,
Yep.
right?
Yeah.
We need
Okay.
flour and milk and butter and eggs. And of course, I want it all vegan. But the point is, estrogen can be one ingredient in your cancer cake. It's not even necessarily a necessary ingredient to make a cake, but
Okay.
it's just something that's there in the pantry that can contribute. And mechanistically, it's proven again and again and again. From petri dishes to animal studies to full on human studies, we know that estrogen can be carcinogenic. It can contribute to creating a disruption of how a cell normally floats happily throughout its life and then replicates itself. And it can disrupt that whole situation and allow mutations and mistakes to happen. And then it proliferates that mutated cell until finally it's a cancer cell. Here's the key. Here's the big BUT.
Yes.
But
Yes.
estrogen does so very infrequently.
Okay.
And when people on hormone replacement happen to get breast cancer,
Mm-hmm.
they are 40 to 50% less likely to die from that cancer than someone not on HRT.
Okay.
Because the cancers that go along with people on HRT are generally less aggressive, more curable, and people do well. Now, the incidence in large studies is, just to cut to the bottom line, is somewhere around, for say 15 years use of HRT, 1.2% increase. 1.2% increase.
Not a lot.
Okay, I just said a drink a day increases breast cancer by 10%. I
Right.
didn't give you stats, but being overweight or obese, which is a nice seg into GLPs,
Right.
literature varies somewhere between 20% all the way up to a 200% increase in breast cancer. Okay, so let's not scream about 1.2% when it has so many benefits. So I'll just
Yes.
break down my bottom line with HRT for people wondering, because I'm hyper focused on the breast cancer
Yeah.
aspects. So how do I square this
Yeah.
circle?
Right. Exactly.
Okay, so I think of menopause as three things. One is what you notice and complain about: hot flashes, night sweats, vaginal dryness, mood swings, increased wrinkles, itchy skin, decreased libido, right? All the
Yep.
stuff that's
All the
bothering you.
things. Yep.
That, guess what? Estrogen totally fixes all of it. So
Yep.
that's a big bonus.
Yeah.
Part two is what you didn't know was because of the perimenopause and menopause transition and lack of hormones. But once it's said out loud to you, you're like, oh, I have that. And I had no idea. I had no idea that my new heart palpitations, that my frozen shoulder,
Yeah.
that my adult acne, that the new hairs on my chin, that
Mhm.
my newfound anxiety or depression is menopause. Okay.
Yep.
Then we have category three that I care about the most. I care about quality of life for sure, but this is actually can be life and death stuff. And it's behind the scenes and you don't even know it's happening until it happened. And that is an acceleration of cardiovascular disease, messing up with your health, what used to be a healthy lipid profile. So in other words, your total cholesterol goes up, LDL up, HDL down, triglycerides up, right? So you get
Yeah.
all that badness happening
Yeah.
that leads to cardiovascular disease, which is heart attacks and strokes.
Yep.
Osteoporosis. Your bones are getting thinner and you don't know until all you did was step off the curb and cracked your ankle, right? You're like, well, I was only thinking and I broke a bone. So estrogen is super protective and bone building. So a
Yeah.
lack of estrogen quickly over the decades, between menopause and your fracture has been allowing your bone resorption to occur, whereas hormone stops it. And along with that goes sarcopenia, which is muscle wasting or,
Mm.
thinning of your muscles,
Right. Yes.
which leads to imbalance and postural, like just gait and posture and balance. So when you're imbalanced and then you fall, then you get the fracture. An unfun fact: 1 out of every 2 women in menopause gets a totally preventable osteoporotic fracture.
Wow. That's
Shocking
huge.
data. It's huge. There was a
Huge.
study in the New England Journal, I want to say it was 2024, and it looked at women over 65 who got a femur fracture,
Mm-hmm.
30% death rate in the next 12 months from the fracture.
Wow.
So fractures can equal death, not just disability.
Right. No. Yeah. And you hear about that when people get much older. You hear about that all the time. They fell, and that was the beginning of the end. And
Right.
so everything we can do when we're younger to not have that happen is beneficial.
For sure. And again, you've got to do your part too, right? So we can do the patch and the pill or, creams and all the pellets and the different ways of getting HRT, but you've got to do your part. We have to do the exercise. We have to
Yeah.
eat well. We have to strength train. We have to maintain all the other aspects of a healthy body, because not one thing like taking a GLP or putting on an estrogen patch is the panacea for all ailments.
Correct.
The
Yeah.
other thing that's behind the scenes that I worry significantly about is GSM, which is the genitourinary syndrome of menopause. So
Okay.
both your genitals and your urinary tract love estrogen, and the withdrawal of it will lead to, in the vagina, people notice often, usually, especially if they're sexually active, that it's sex is painful, everything's
Right.
drier down there, you can get bleeding. The vagina actually shortens and narrows, and the acidity changes. But the thing women don't know is that you can start getting UTIs, urinary tract infections, with no intercourse. It's not like the kind of fun UTI you may have gotten in
Right.
your 20s from having had
Right.
sex. Like you're like, ah,
Right.
I'll take that.
That
I'll
was
take that
just
for
the that was the price you paid back then.
that's the price you pay. Now you're just like, 80
Yeah.
and getting these, not that 80-year-olds don't have sex. Sorry, I didn't mean to imply that
No,
directly,
but
but
it's not as common. Yes.
not as common. They have less. And they still get the UTIs with none of the fun. So
Right.
the catch there is that when you're older, especially because the symptoms are not necessarily obvious, it can progress really fast to urosepsis, with the bacterial infection gets into your bloodstream and then you're hospitalized. This happened to my own mother.
Wow.
She was 87 and she was loony as like completely loony. I walked into the hospital where she was hospitalized for the urosepsis, and she looked at me and she's like, "Good." She took off her covers. Get out! Let's get out of here. There's a guy with a gun. Like she had lost it
Oh my goodness.
in her urosepsis, and I wasn't
Holy
sure we were
cow.
going to get her back. And women die from urosepsis. So
Wow.
the one thing I didn't mention on purpose, and I'll mention now because I didn't forget, and it's dementia. The data's mixed and unclear. It's evolving, and I think we will figure it out very soon. But there's protective effects and deleterious effects when it comes to estrogen in the brain. We have more receptors for estrogen in our brains than on any other organ in the body. And so it's very protective in that way, but it's specific. Okay. So there used to be like the Women's Health Initiative, which I can dissect with you if you want. But this big study that said that being on hormones increased cardiovascular events by like 26%. Well, if you do the dissection work, which eventually we all did, we found out that if you have existing cardiovascular disease, if you already have plaque buildup, and then you become menopausal and decide to take hormones, you're going to accelerate that plaque buildup and increase your risk of a heart attack. So that woman needs to dial back the HRT use and fix the heart first or something, right?
Right. Yep.
I think we're going to figure out the exact same thing with the brain. For example, it may come down to genetics of ApoE3 and E4.
Right.
These are these genes the Alzheimer's gene, but you can have a heterogeneity, meaning you have a one good one, one bad one. And then if you layer HRT on top of that, maybe it accelerates dementia. But if you have a 3-3, which means you don't have any of this
Right.
Alzheimer's predisposition, then it's full on protective
Right.
of
Then
dementia.
it's helpful. Yeah.
Yeah. Lisa
Yeah.
Mosconi is an amazing researcher worth following that space if you're interested in neurodegenerative disorders and estrogen specifically. That's her
Right.
entire world.
Okay, that's good to know because I do know a lot of people are interested in that. I feel like dementia is taking on another realm, and I see that more and more often. But what's interesting about what you said is I also think there's a very individualistic approach to all of this. And I don't want to say it's like pick your poison, but in some ways, maybe it is a little bit, It's like, would you rather maybe have a slight increased risk of one thing in exchange for some benefits of some of the other things? And HRT can help a lot of women who are in perimenopause and in menopause with lots of things that make everyday life incredibly difficult. And so,
Absolutely.
in my opinion, it's like, would you rather have a better everyday life and maybe you have a greater risk of potentially having dementia down the road, maybe, but right now your current quality of life can be improved so dramatically by making some of these changes to your life and reduce your risk of breast cancer also, which is another huge one for women given how many of us get it.
Yeah. The data is that estrogen alone doesn't actually seem to, it increases risk maybe a tiny bit in bigger studies, but other studies have shown that it actually decreases risk by as much as 23%. So
Right.
it's the progesterone component of hormone replacement that seems to be a little bit more sinister, which is interesting and multi-layered. But I do think it's what you're saying. It's an individualized conversation and a balance. But for the vast majority,
Yeah.
benefit exceeds risk. And
Agreed.
the risks that you're talking about are probably manageable even if they show up, like the breast cancer.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. Okay, before we run out of time, GLP-1s, because being overweight was one of your massive boulders. Yeah, exactly. Let's talk about GLP-1s. How do you help people with GLP-1s, and what's your stance as a doctor on GLP-1s?
So I've been watching this space really carefully for the last 3 years. Of course, things like Trulicity, the GLP-1s have been around for 20 years in type 2 diabetics, right? But
Right.
now it's exploded. We've got different options of which medications, and the other indication of obesity has been accepted by the FDA. But for non-FDA approved, like microdosing, or if you are overweight and need to lose weight, maybe full dose, the benefits, I keep, maybe I shouldn't say this, but I was watching all the science and I kept waiting, not like wanting harm for anyone, but I was just waiting for you, like, aha, I knew it. I knew it would like cause blindness, or like like a year ago, I saw Ozempic and cancer and I was like, aha. And I clicked on it, decreases colorectal, decreases breast, decreases pancreatic cancer. And it wasn't like I was like, no, I don't know. Part of me is like, you know what? I've been skipping dessert since I was born. Like I can't be just a shot. But it isn't just a shot. And like it has become a theme of our time together today. It is leading a balanced life. And that means paying attention to the diet, to the exercise, to the sleep, to the, details that surround the one intervention that's going to be a big help. So yes, the GLP-1s have a massive role in my breast cancer patients now that I'm a true believer in the benefits and I've seen the science. And of course, you can have some nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, constipation. There are bigger complications like gallstones and pancreatitis and bowel obstruction, but it's all so manageable if you're getting watched by a physician who's mindful of your dosing and checking labs, and you don't want to go rogue with it. And you won't die even if some of these unwanted things happen.
Right.
Okay, so here's the thing: the GLPs have blown my mind on in so many respects, on so many metabolic and health related levels. So we already talked about the damaging effects of adipose and this endocrine like effect that fat cells have throughout our body. So obviously the weight loss has a tremendous benefit there. And the metabolic benefits of increasing that insulin sensitivity, of having your sugar come and go more briskly, of having it released into the bloodstream more slowly. Why? GLP-1s slow stomach emptying of a meal. So the meal sits there, creating that feeling of satiety and goes to your brain, telling you that you're full. So you've got a double whammy. The stretch receptors in the stomach are like, hey, lady, stop eating now. And your brain is like, I'm actually satisfied and full. So the slower emptying of food into the intestines means that the carbs there's less glucose at any moment getting absorbed into the bloodstream. Therefore, there are no spikes. There's no glucose spike. There's no insulin spike. So metabolically, everything is quieter. Cardiovascular wise, GLPs make this endothelial cells of the cells that line your blood vessels more relaxed. So blood pressure goes down and we see decreased heart attacks and decreased strokes in people on GLP-1s. And that whole lipid profile of bad cholesterol, that starts to reverse and normalize. Psychologically, I talked about the satiety thoughts, but also the people call it food noise, that obsession about like, what am I going to eat lunch? When am I going to eat it? Like, and is there enough of it? Maybe I might have chips tonight. And you're fighting with yourself. Like all, like you just
that ice cream's calling me.
Right? I know. Like, I hear it from the freezer. Your addictions go down, and it won't only be for food. It could be for cigarettes or alcohol or other addictions. And mood improves in people. I mean, incredible like downstream effects that we weren't expecting. Liver. So a lot of people have the fatty livers. So non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, it's called, but basically there's fat shoved into your liver the way it was stuffed into the insulin receptors. And that makes your major detox organ and has all those enzymes that are converting things into their active form in the liver. It can't do its job well when it's stuffed with fat. So you lose the fat right out of the liver. And we see this evidenced by liver enzyme markers, ALT, that we look at to assess liver function and health. And that all
Right.
improves. One major benefit that's unfolding more recently is protection. We were talking about Alzheimer's and estrogen and such. There's less neuroinflammation in people
Mm.
on GLPs. So
Okay.
all of a
Yeah.
sudden, all of those like neurofibrillary tangles inside the brain that lead to things like Alzheimer's, dementia, Parkinson's, et cetera, those are getting squelched. And so we're thinking this is, a direct connection to less neurodegenerative problems down the road because the inflammation is systemic. The drop
Right.
in inflammation is going to help every organ just
Everything.
work
Yeah.
better. In the cancer realm specifically, and this needs to be proven, but it's already started with data rolling in, and there are big trials going on in places like I know MD Anderson, Dana-Farber. There's a bunch of places that are putting breast cancer patients on GLP-1s and following them for decreased recurrence and mortality for breast cancer because of the GLP-1. Now,
Yeah.
usually the people that are enrolling are overweight or obese.
Hmm.
And of course, if you lose weight, we've talked now about
Right.
so many beneficial
Yeah.
mechanisms, but it's going to
Yes.
go beyond that. It just has to do with when you get rid of the systemic inflammation, when you get rid of the insulin. One thing I mentioned in passing, I think, was one other thing that's bad that insulin does is it elevates IGF-1, which was the
Yes.
bad promoter of all growth.
Yeah.
So if you in the cancer realm of how we're thinking GLPs work as an anti-cancer agent, it would be to decrease IGF-1 and decrease inflammation, thereby allowing your immune system, the innate protectors and killers of cancer, to do their thing. And when do
Yeah.
they do it? When you're sleeping.
When you're
Um,
sleeping. I knew the answer to that.
yeah. Reproductively, we've known for a solid decade that people on GLP-1s and PCOS, polycystic ovary syndrome, they definitely improve their metabolic profile and their PCOS just
Yeah.
disappears.
Disappears. Yeah. I've heard that too.
So many benefits and synergistic benefits with HRT.
Yeah.
New studies
Definitely.
are showing that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think what we should be so excited about as women is it all feels very empowering. It feels like all of these steps, all these things that you can do, whether it be what you're doing with exercise, what you're doing with the food you put in your mouth, what you're doing with microplastics, what you're doing with your weight, if you're trying GLP-1s, if you're not, if you're trying hormone replacement therapy, there are choices, there are options, there are things out there that you can proactively do to take control of your own health to try to prevent breast cancer and many of the other things that this lifestyle can benefit for you as a woman and as a man too. But we're talking women because we're talking breasts mostly. So I think it's super empowering. And I think women should feel very excited about what's happening in medicine and what's happening with the technology.
Yeah, absolutely. You have so much more control over this disease and over your health destiny than you probably ever thought or imagined. So it's very
Yeah,
exciting. You're a
you
good
did.
student. You just rattled off a great summary, by the way.
I tried. Dr. Funk, you have been just a wealth of knowledge. I am so excited to share this with everyone because really, this is what people need. They need knowledge, they need information, they need actionable things that they can proactively do and look into. I'm going to have everything in the show notes about how people can find you. They can get your resources, intermittent fasting, GLP-1s, HRT. We're going to put all that in the show notes so that everybody can feel like they have access to the resources in addition to being able to get to see you. So I thank you so much for your time, for bringing your sunshine, your knowledge, and your passion to something that I think is so important, which is women's health. So thank you.
Well, thank you for helping me spread my message.
I love it. Have a beautiful day. Thank you for joining us for this week's episode of Building the Best You. If you are ready to take a deeper dive into transforming your life, check out my Empowerment Fundamentals course on my website, houseofjermar.com. Thank you, and I will see you next week with another inspiring guest.